Good morning friends and welcome back to NPTEL online certification course on public speaking. And in the previous lecture we discussed about meeting management. Now before we go to tell you something more about the lecture which I have planned as leadership skills, let me tell you that one of the advantages of public speaking is that it provides you with umpteen career opportunities, since it familiarizes you with different speaking situations and also with myriad people. Most of you might remember that quite a good many famous names who have created history have been excellent public speakers as well as extraordinary leaders. Hence, public speaking and leadership are very much connected. Now, you might be thinking that how is public speaking related to leadership? My dear friends, you will find that an effective speaker influences, encourages, persuades and wins people through their communicative abilities. Thus, to speak is to influence others with the help of one's conviction, commitment and clarity of vision, and these qualities are found even in leaders and their way of working. Hence, I am going to discuss with you leadership skills. But before we go into the depth of the discussion, let me share with you a story that I read somewhere about a myna and the elephant. Now, what is this story about? Once an elephant told myna that since long I have been thinking of flying like you. If I could flap my wings like you and could see from the sky lands, villages, hamlets, rivers and everything, I could really have felt myself blessed. And the myna said, it's very simple. The myna simply gave a feather to the elephant and told the elephant to keep it in his mouth and then flap his ears. The elephant did so, my dear friends. The elephant flapped and the elephant started flying, and the elephant could see with his wings from the top. The elephant could see rivers, oceans, seas, lands, valleys, mountains and everything. And when the elephant came to the ground, the elephant thanked myna and said, it is only because of you that my wish has been fulfilled. And you know what the myna replied? The myna replied that I did nothing. I simply gave you a feather that was old. It was simply because of your belief in it that you could fly. My dear friends, the same is true of someone becoming a great speaker and a great leader. It is all a matter of conviction, it is all a matter of commitment. Now, what exactly do you understand or do you think about leadership? Leadership is also a sort of influencing skills. It can actually be understood as tools, behaviors, attitudes and capabilities that are required in a person to be successful at motivating, influencing and directing others. My dear friends, all of you who have been listening to the lectures on public speaking might have by now realized that in order to succeed in public speaking, you also need a sort of motivation. It is actually your influence through which you can win the crowd, and you can, with your speech and presentation, talk and other things, you can direct others. There can be quite a good number of definitions to make us understand what leaders are and what is leadership skills. Let us take a few. One by Elizabeth Ross Cantor, who says, leadership is the art of mastering change. And as a public speaker, you also are going to become a person who is going to bring a sort of change. The ability to mobilize others' efforts in new direction. You have one idea, and through your idea you want to influence others and want that they should be persuaded. There is another definition or an observation by Vince Lombardi, who says, leaders are made, they are not born. But my dear friends, we are living in the 21st century where we can say that leaders are not born, leaders can be made. So, what Vince Lombardi says, they are made by what? Hard effort. Fine. So, leaders are made, they are not born. I mean, this is just opposite to the view of many people who says that leaders are born. No. So, leaders are made by hard efforts, which is actually the price which all of us must pay to achieve on any goal that is worthwhile. What is the essence? The essence is that with your hard efforts, with your efforts of influencing, motivating, persuading people, you can become a leader. Now, you might be thinking, what is it in leadership that actually motivates people and that makes somebody a crowd puller? Leadership has got power, isn't it? So, because you can influence people, and how can you influence people? With your persuasive act, with your constructive ideas. So, leadership involves the act of influencing the followers in accordance with their leader's wishes, and power is defined as the ability to influence the actions of others or to produce an effect. That is why leadership actually involves effective use of power. So, for any speaker who can motivate the crowd, say for 30 minutes or for 20 minutes or whatsoever, this entire period he has actually got a power. And this power not only is reflected for this amount of time, rather it can continue to generate in people a new inspiration, and that is why we say leaders can bring change, leaders are powerful. Now, you might all be very much eager to know about the abilities which actually can or which actually should a leader have, why the leaders are able to control people, to attract people, and what sort of power do these leaders have? Positional power, isn't it? Once you get a position in any organization, in any unit, in any institution. So, because of your position, fine, and it is only because of your ability that is within you. Then we have personal power, then we can call coercive power, and this coercive power is also one element through which you can coerce people, persuade people, threaten people, induce people, and you can always tell them that if you can follow my principle, you can be rewarded, fine. And then resource and reward power, relationship power, fine. You will find if you can have a look at the sort of leaders who are around you, you can find that there are some leaders which actually believe in creating a sort of relationship. As a public speaker, you also, when you go to speak on the dais or you go to give a professional presentation, you are also going to create a sort of rapport, you are going to create a sort of relationship. Then referent power and then expert power. Because you know more, because you have knowledge, and that is why you are an expert in that area, and that power is called expert power. Francis Bacon, the famous English essayist, says knowledge is power, and this power is derived from one's specialization, one's expertise, isn't it, and one's ability to have values, and the values which can win him or which can bring him laurels. One power we have left, that is referent power, through which one can exercise a high degree of fandom and fondness. No. Why? People are attracted towards many celebrities, fine. It is because of their fandom, their favoritism, and this sort of power, we always say that he can pull crowds. That is why you might have also found in many circles, people who have got a lot of popularity, they are invested with a new power, especially in certain areas, in case of celebrities and charismatic leaders. Now, many of you also might be thinking that do leaders or can leaders be managers? Fine. Is there any connection between leadership and management? In this regard, let us take an observation by Warren Bennis from his book on becoming a leader, where he says that there is a difference between a manager and a leader. Now, what is the difference? The difference is that whereas a leader will have followers, the manager will have simply subordinates. Fine. The leader can focus on people and manager can focus on system and structure. Leaders can inspire, managers can direct, managers can control, leaders can ask questions and managers will simply direct. Leaders can inspire and motivate, whereas managers simply instructs. Managers simply direct, they actually plan budgets and they also see that rules and policies are implemented, whereas leaders, because they have vision and through that vision they actually want to make new policies and rules. There are other quotes also, there can be quite a good number of quotes on leadership, and one quote by Stephen Covey is very important. Leadership focuses on doing the right things, management focuses on doing things right, leadership focuses on doing the right things. Now, most of you, because nowadays, even though people do not believe, but leadership also can be taken as a sort of profession, as a sort of career, isn't it? There are lots of opportunities. But before that, let us try to understand some of the theories about leadership. There are some theories which you must be acquainted with, and the very first is trait theory. Trait, virtue. No, this trait theory became popular in 1920s. Prior to it, there was great men's theory. No, in the 19th century, great men's theory. Many of the people whom you read about, they were great men. They actually could influence you through their ideals. But now there has actually been change, and as the new future planners and makers of India's and many other countries' destiny, you will find that it is not only the influence, but actually it is the implementation that is very important. So, according to trait theory, which became very popular in 1920s, they simply believe that leaders are born. Fine. So, most of the religious leaders you will find people say that they actually have a divine touch in them. They are simply born, they possess inherent qualities or traits. 1950s, there was a change, and this change actually resulted in behavior theory. Leadership ability can be developed. We are not born leaders, but we can actually learn leadership, fine, by certain effective behaviors. And then the situational theory, where leaders can emerge. 2020s, you may find that leaders emerge from these situations, and in situations you actually are required to have a sort of leadership trait through which your contingent behavior can take the followers along with you. Now, there can be quite a good many explanations about all these theories, but then in great man's theory, which was developed in the 19th century, leadership was predetermined by possession of inherent qualities, as I said. In terms of psychology, a trait is a stable and inflexible characteristic, and the focus in this sort of leadership was for the right qualities or right trait. Now, such a sort of leadership had limitations, where it was quite impossible to curate an exact set of universal leadership due to cultural plurality and contextual variations. On the right hand side, you can find the traits of a great leader: intelligence, creativity, confidence, credibility, motivation and zeal. We have also talked about behavioral leadership theory, where your behavior depends upon two aspects. One is cognitive factor and the other is situational factors. Fine, your behaviors can be examined through certain personality traits, some of your actions that could be observed, some of the inherent traits which can be modified, because as man we have certain limitations. Not all our traits are good. We also may have some bad traits. So, the theorists who were the proponents of behavioral leadership, they actually believed in a sort of ideal leadership behavior which could actually be learned. And then, contrary to, just opposite to the trait theory, this behavioral leadership believed in training and practice. Nowadays, you can find that there are workshops on leadership where you are trained as to how you can take a sort of decision in a given circumstances when it is a critical moment. Now, when we talk about behavioral theory, we must try to understand what Robert Blake and Jane Morton in their book The Managerial Grid say. They actually are very much concerned about the concern for subordinates and concern for tasks. They believe that subordinates are also important, fine, and tasks are also important. Now, people or the followers of this sort of behavioral leadership, they have different styles. Country club style, where they try to create a sort of amicable or friendly atmosphere. Then the middle of the road style, where they do not go either with followers and nor with tasks. There can be impoverished style, where the leaders can have some amount of egoistic nature, and such people are least effective, and such a sort of style is considered to be less effective. Then team style, where a person can be a team person. You might have found that when you appear at some interviews, they will ask you, are you a team person or are you a person who loves to work in isolation? Now, team style is nowadays very popular, where collaborative approach is focused more only by the reason that this collaborative effort or approach can bring more results. And then the last, that is perish or produce, or produce or perish. Autocratic, no, such people. So, people having such a style, They are very autocratic by nature and they may appear effective for some short period, but not always effective. You can think of such people who might be even around you in your organization or wheresoever. Now, such people are not sustainable in the long run. Now, we come to situational leadership theory, which was developed by Paul Hersey and Ken Blanchard. As we go to the word itself, situation. So, such a sort of leadership is tested and is based on the attitude of not only of the leader, because the leadership behavior is contingent on the situational context. What sort of attitude do my followers have? Do they accept me as my leader? Skills and abilities can help design or accomplish a specific task, and then the willingness of the followers to perform the task. Now, such a sort of model defines 4 styles: the power to delegate, I mean not keeping everything with yourself; the power to support when somebody comes with an innovative idea, and through coaching and directing. No, in such a situation people can be trained, fine, and the appropriateness of these styles of leadership depends upon the task, which is situation oriented, and the ability or the willingness of the subordinates or the supporters. Now, here are 4 as we have already mentioned. So, we will skip this simply by saying that when you direct, it is actually called a telling style. You tell people what to do. Coaching, no, it is just 2 way, as we coach somebody, no, training them, and supporting. Even at times you can encourage them, and then you are delegating. So, when you delegate, it is not that always and every now and then you interfere with, rather you allow them. There is minimal direction and support by the leader. You actually allow these people because you believe that they are capable enough to run the show on their own. In general, my dear friends, there can be certain leadership styles which we must be familiar with. The very first is authoritarian. I mean, it comes from the word authority. A leader can be authoritarian. So, my dear friends, as a public speaker, if you become very much authoritarian, naturally you will not survive for a long time. And even in leadership also, you can survive only for some time if you are very much authoritarian. The next is laissez-faire, and then charismatic, then transformational, democratic, bureaucratic, transactional, and servant leadership. The 8 styles of leadership we have to get ourselves familiar with. Now, when we talk about the authoritarian one, we know that it comes from the word authority, and here you have, as a leader, you have the excessive control, isn't it? You simply believe in a clear structure where you are also supposed to take autocratic decisions. Now, such a leadership can be used only when you require quick results in a very short time. The advantages are that you cannot hold any other person responsible in such a situation, and the disadvantage is that you are not allowing the creativity which might be there in others. You actually demotivate others because you keep every power with yourself. Now, democratic one, in democratic, as the word democratic comes from democracy, the characteristics of democratic style of leadership is that you actually try to share the responsibility with other employees, and you focus on the development of a harmonious goal, isn't it? And here there is actually a scope for creative thinking which we could not have in authoritarian one. Now, too much emphasis here is on the team because you are collaborating with all of them, but then there is one limitation or a disadvantage also. Decision making becomes very slow, it becomes a tardy process, fine. Sometimes there can be haphazard randomness in the group because of the lack of an absolute control, fine. Now, laissez-faire leadership style Actually, this comes from the French word. Fine, means leave alone, leave alone. And in this style of leadership, the leaders actually follow the principle to let things take their own course without any interference. In such a style of leadership, followers are endowed with too much of freedom, no interference is there. This style is advisable only when employees are mature, well educated, they understand things and issues very clearly. Especially with experienced followers, we can follow such a sort of style where the task assigned and intrinsically motivated can bring better results. But remember, when we go for a laissez-faire leadership, we will find that we are neither authoritarian nor very much democratic, rather we allow full freedom to our followers. Now, bureaucratic comes from the word bureaucracy, as you all know. Such a sort of style, you will find that it actually tends to resist any change or evolution in the structure, hierarchical structure, fine. And of course, you comply with the rules, follow the procedures, you are very much by the rule, and the style can work only in situations where repetitive tasks have to be performed and there is a high regulation and control. Now, in such a leadership style, there is once again a lack of creativity, and it may in course of time lead to a sort of rivalry, fine. It can also lead at times to more competition and too much of rivalry, where there can be jealousies, where there can be ill will among people only because of the bureaucratic leadership style. Now, charismatic leadership style, charismatic leadership comes from charisma, isn't it? Now, these people are the most effective. Why? Because they can understand that what will be the emotional impact, fine. Such people, such leaders are very much visionary, they appeal to emotions, they can arouse followers' motives and go by that. Such people, I mean such charismatic leaders are people of strong values, their language is also very much embellished. They have a goal which is set and the goal is very meaningful, and you frame, as a leader you frame meaningful goals and you are ready to face adversity. That is where your charisma will work. So, such leaders actually believe in the foundation of trust and empowerment and authenticity to help overcome a crisis or obstacle. Now, another category of leadership style is transactional, from transaction, no? Now, such a leadership style functions upon a clear and definite chain of command by the leader who has the full authority, fine, and employees are restricted to a blind obedience, blind following to the leaders and their commands, and you actually, there is a sort of coercion also. You from time to time you instruct, you threaten them by telling them about rewards and punishments. Now, in such a sort of leadership style, one has to be very careful about the clarity in terms of instructions, and because the main goal is the completion of the task. So, you expect your followers to strictly adhere to the conventional organizational norms. Such a sort of leadership actually expects a sort of creativity boost, skill development and empowerment, but then that is always relegated to the margins because the leaders keep more control to themselves and do not allow the followers even a little bit of freedom. Now, another category of leadership is transformational style, transform, bringing change. No, it was actually proposed by J.M. Burns and B.M. Bass in the 1970s. So, the main mission was to transform the goals, vision and mission of the organization and the followers. Now, this sort of leadership style expects the leader to inspire and motivate, but there are certain things. What are they? Developing the capability of the employee by allowing them to go for training, by allowing them to go for practice sessions, and then your main aim is to bring change. That is why you actually expect followers and you want your followers to be able to sell that vision, and you actually appeal to higher ideal and values, and you try to establish a sort of cordiality with all the followers, because you believe in a sort of transformation, you believe in a sort of change. Now, there are certain characteristics also. So, individual consideration, then inspirational motivation, idealized influence and intellectual stimulation. So, these are some of the styles and skills that a transformational leader is expected to have. Now, the last one, that is servant leadership style. Now, see, you can be a leader, but at the same time you act like a servant. Your main goal is to serve. This term was coined by Robert Greenleaf, fine, in his essay The Servant as Leader, where Greenleaf says the servant leader is servant first, and it begins with a natural feeling that one wants to serve, and then the person is different from one who is leader first because of the need to assuage an unusual power drive. He is not worried more about power, he is more worried about the service. And the goals of such a leadership style is to serve others, to prioritize the collective goal, and to have a sort of priority of the collective goal over self-centeredness, selfish interests. Albert Einstein says the highest density of the individual is to serve rather than to rule. My dear friends, if all of us follow this sort of leadership style, the world will become a very beautiful place. There will be no quarrels, no chaos, but service only will be the notion. Now, another one which actually may be considered to be the sum and substance of all sorts of leadership, and in this regard we can take the views of Goldman, who says that there can be 6 leadership styles, though some of them may be overlapping. Commanding, a leader may be commanding, a leader may be visionary, leader may be affiliative, mixing, democratic, pace setting and coaching. And there are certain examples also given. A commanding leader will always command and say, do what I tell you. Visionary will always take the people along with and say, come with me. Affiliative will, people come first. Democratic, what do you think? I mean, respecting others' opinion as well. And pace setting is somebody who is goal oriented and will say, do as I do now. And the coaching style is, try this, fine. Now, my dear friends, in all these styles there can be certain positive qualities. A commanding leader can be negative at times, a visionary will always be positive, affiliative will be positive, but then somebody who says, somebody who creates a sort of pace setting can be negative. My dear friends, from time to time leadership style changes, and it actually depends upon people as to what sort of style they are going to adopt, because with changing situations and circumstances, the things or the styles or the visions that we had in the 20th century have already gone a change because of so many factors. So, we can always say that a leadership that actually responds to the change can be an effective leadership. My dear friends, we have already discussed the various styles of leadership, and I think all these will actually enable you, because you have already or you are emerging as an effective public speaker. So, you can also practice some of these leadership styles when time and opportunity so desire and so expect and so require of your own talent. So, the time has come to wind up this talk, but not before I take a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, who says, "A good leader inspires people to have confidence in him. A great leader inspires people to have confidence in themselves." I think all of you will have a belief in your abilities, as the myna had told the elephant, and will also tell the outside world that you have confidence in them also. Only then the true leadership can be realized. With this, I come to end this talk. I wish you all a very good day and look forward to seeing you in the next lecture, where we shall be talking about or continue with the same lecture, but we shall focus on some other style and on some other skills of leadership. Thank you very much. I wish you all a good day.